less than a minute. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Skokie Village Board for Tuesday, February the 16th, 2021. Until further notice, meetings of the Skokie Village Board will be held electronically, with a majority of village officials participating via remote access in order to comply with the State of Illinois Gubernatorial Disaster Proclamation. Members of the public who wish to comment on an item on the published agenda or to comment during public comments needs to submit their statement or question in writing to the village manager's office, and all properly submitted statements or questions will be presented and read during the relevant portion of the meeting. Written comments may be submitted by email to citizencomments@skokie.org before or during the meetings, by mail to Village of Skokie, Village Manager's Office, 5127 Oakton, Skokie 60077, or via the village's drop box located just outside by the public entryway to Village Hall. And now we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Village Clerk Pramod Shah. Allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. The meeting of the village board will come to order, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Trustee Roberts?
Here.
Trustee Sutker?
Here.
Trustee Gilbert?
Here.
Trustee Bromberg?
Here.
Trustee Klein?
Here.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Here.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Here we have a quorum. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda for this evening's meeting. A motion is in order. Trustee Klein, seconded by Trustee Roberts. Is there anything on the consent agenda anybody would like to have removed? If not, call the roll, please.
Trustee Roberts?
Aye.
Trustee Sutker?
Aye.
Trustee Gilbert?
Aye.
Trustee Bromberg?
Aye.
Trustee Klein?
Aye.
Trustee Gray Keeler?
Aye.
Mayor Van Dusen?
Aye. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is report of our village manager, John Lockerbie.
Thank you, Mayor Van Dusen, and good evening. Item A is regarding a COVID-19 update. Mike Charlie is unavailable to be with us this evening. Through February 12th, the village has administered 6,199 COVID vaccine doses. We have held 10 vaccine clinics, including first and second dose clinics. These clinics are an impressive operation with 50 staff and volunteers working with approximately 200 patrons an hour. The number and durations of clinics are dependent on the quantity of vaccine received. The village is administering vaccine as quickly as we receive it. The village mailed postcards to all addresses in town, encouraging residents to pre-register for the COVID-19 vaccine. The village notifies Skokie residents when it's their turn to schedule an appointment for their vaccine. There are over 25,000 pre-registrations that have been completed. There's a continued decline in the rate of infection in new COVID-19 cases. The village of Skokie's positivity rate is 3.8%, and as a comparison, Cook County rate is 4.8%. I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Trustee Roberts.
Good evening, John. I've had the opportunity for this afternoon and Friday afternoon to volunteer to take some calls for the health department, and obviously the biggest question on everyone's mind is when they're going to be able to get the vaccine. So Could you speak briefly just to a little bit more what the protocol is? When do you typically know for next week how many dosages you're going to get? And then I know that triggers decisions, like, for example, this week, there's only enough for second doses, right? There's no clinic scheduled for first-time vaccine folks. And I think if you could just explain just briefly, I think it would help residents, give them a little reassurance that we're doing the best we can.
Absolutely. So up to this point, it has been just-in-time information. So the state communicates with us week by week how many vaccine doses they'll be able to ship to us. And on some weeks, there hasn't been confirmation until we actually receive the shipment on a Friday in order to have the clinics the following week. And thus, we send out emails typically on Fridays notifying people that their turn is up and the clinics are scheduled for the following week. I am pleased to report that as of the last few days, the state has been able to give us a couple of week projection on how many doses of vaccine we will be receiving. And so that's a positive from a logistics perspective, but the downside is that for the 2 remaining weeks of February, we are only receiving the number of doses for those patrons that received their first dose 28 days ago. And so both this week and next week, all of the clinics will only be for second dose administration. And so our clinics are available to do 200 patrons an hour. And so we were set up from an infrastructure perspective to do 3 clinics a week. This week we are only doing 2, and we plan the same for next week. And that's based solely on the amount of vaccine that we'll be receiving.
Is there any information you're receiving from the state that indicates that after February, their amount of dosages will be increasing?
There is that potential, but I wouldn't say that with 100% confidence yet. We were optimistic that we were going to be receiving, in addition to our Moderna vaccine, that we would be receiving Pfizer for by the end of February, but that has been put on hold. The state is having some issues with obtaining Pfizer, and so it's a little bit day by day with different situations.
Thank you.
Item B is regarding the sustainability presentation by Max Slingard, our Director of Public Works, and also the lead on our Environmental Sustainability Commission.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, board members. Good to see everybody. And talk about something besides snow for a couple minutes, I hope. Anyway, we'll talk about snow though too. Again, thank you, and Nick, I believe I'm correct in saying we're joined this evening by Jenny Grossman, who's the chairman of the Sustainable Environmental Commission via Zoom as well. So good evening to
Yes,
Jenny.
I'm here.
Good to hear your voice. So thanks again. John asked me to give an update sort of on the village's sustainability efforts, and so I'm pleased to make hopefully brief comments, although I'm sure I'll probably say a little bit more than my time is officially supposed to be allotted. But anyway, I think as we look at sustainability initiatives in the village, it really goes back, I think, decades. And as the mayor and I were chatting the other day, he has a recollection that goes back pretty personally to some of the things that you see on this continuum on this slide in front of you. As we go back and look at some of the village's sustainability efforts, it really goes back literally decades, to the I think what a lot of people think of as a starting point for popular environmental initiatives was curbside recycling, right? And we think of that as an old program, but yet we know from an environmental commission standpoint, it's one we still have to circle back and refresh with people on all the time, and we still push out a lot of public information with respect to recycling and recycling participation rates. But nonetheless, back in its day, You know, Skokie was a real leader in curbside recycling from its inception, in piloting the program in 1988 and in 1989, and then expanding that. I think we're the first of what became the Swank communities to pilot that program. And then, you know, taking sort of a next step forward in, I believe, the 90s, Mr. Mayor. That's correct. We were the first to pilot a wheeled 65-gallon toter to take that system to single stream. So we've done some things over a period of years, which I think it's fair to say we were leaders. We're also the first community in this area to implement a commercial waste hauling franchise. And what was important about that was not only sort of achieving efficiencies in terms of the collection system and minimizing truck traffic on streets and bringing benefits to the business community in terms of uniformity in pricing, but it was also about getting commercial recycling opportunities for the business community with that same sort of uniformity of offering of recycling and uniformity of pricing that was a little bit unique and different and has now frequently been copied. As we move forward into sort of the 2007 to 2015 period, you know, the Environmental Commission was formed in 2007. The village passed an environmental policy ordinance in 2008. Among the more significant initiatives at that time, in addition to the formation of the commission, of course, and one that was notable from a public works standpoint, was the village of Skokie banned the collection of grass clippings into our yard waste system, and that caused a little ruckus, I think would be fair to say, in the community. And I think it is probably still fair to say that Skokie is a leader in that regard, because I know of no other community, certainly in this area, that has followed in our footsteps in taking grass clippings out of the waste system altogether. So I think it's fair to say that Skokie does have a good history in sort of being willing to be at the forefront of some different things from an environmental standpoint. I won't go through everything on this list, or we'll be here all night, but you see some reference to the deployment of electric charging stations and membership in the Clean Air Counts community. So there are some positive things there. The Skokie Environmental Sustainability Plan, really an outgrowth of the Skokie Community Health Plan of 2012, which set a goal to establish an environmental plan. And so I want to keep that in mind as we talk about the plan. The plan was really an outgrowth of a collaborative effort between the Skokie Board of Health and ultimately the Skokie Sustainable Environmental Commission, as it was a collaboration between multiple departmental staffs. The health department staff, both the public health side, the environmental health side, along with public works staff and community development staff, all played sort of an integral role in advancing this plan document, which ultimately went through both of those public boards before arriving to the village board for its approval in August of 2016. So, fast forward the slides so you all can keep up. I apologize for that. I think what's important to note is that the goals and objectives set in the plan were really broad, and they're not designed to be overly prescriptive, and I think that's reflective of the fact that it was designed in that way by multiple boards, and it was designed to have those sort of objectives where it could be tailored, if you will, to each commission's work, to each department's work, so that goals, objectives, and work plans could be sort of fit to the work of each department or to the work of each commission in undertaking their work plans to advance the objectives of the plan. It was broadly based around these five focus areas. You see them listed there: water management, air quality, energy conservation, transportation, and waste management. Water management, you see some features there associated with the water management topic. That encompassed water runoff and control, water quality and effluent, water reuse, and water conservation. Here, an example of education. Education has always been part and parcel of what the Environmental Commission does and is about. I think that's probably, they would say, their most important function, is helping to inform and to advise residents, business owners in the community about various environmental subjects, researching environmental subjects, and trying to push information out there and making people aware is a key part of what the Environmental Commission's function is. As you look forward to some of their items, you know, they have been in existence now for going on 14 years, and so over a broad range of time, they have investigated and researched a number of issues. And so you'll see some items on this listing that are both newer and older, but I think that's important in sort of understanding sort of the totality of their existence. You see a reference here to natural lawn care. Earlier on in their time period, they did quite a bit of investigation about natural lawn care and evolving policies on integrated pest management. And they looked very consciously at the village's turf care maintenance along with the park district's turf care maintenance practices, and helped us to move in a more natural lawn care direction with our large turf areas over here at the Village Green, for example, along Channel Park. And so there was a lot of good work done in that regard, which of course has ultimately a water quality benefit in terms of water runoff. More recently, the village has spent a lot of effort with respect to chloride reductions. The MWRD has a significant initiative going on right now involving best practices for chloride reductions, which is based on removing chloride pollutants from the Chicago area waterway system. A part and parcel of that is reducing salt usage, and so the village has made investments, and you see a little screen capture there. That's a screenshot of vehicles that have been circulating in your community for 12 hours or more today. That's a snow and ice control system in one of our snow and ice control vehicles that's controlling a spreader. And so we've introduced liquids into our trucks, and which is intended to reduce bounce and scatter of road salt on a roadway to allow us to use less salt. Included in that arsenal of products that we use now is a beet heat product, which is a natural sugar product that's a little bit brown in color. That is another additive that we use, which is again intended to adhere to the roadway better, allow you to stretch the product and use less salt on the roadways. Paired with that is utilization of GPS tracking on the vehicles to design more efficient and hopefully more optimized plow routes to reduce miles driven, all for those similar environmental benefits. Other popular items you see depicted here, green alley programs. The village has been fortunate to get grant funding and has done 7 green alleys. There's quite a few other things on this list, and John's already looking at me, so I'll keep moving quickly. But the other one I'll point out that was super popular in its time was the rain barrel program, which we facilitated with MWRD, provided the rain barrels. We sort of coordinated that, made them available to residents, and got them out in the community. And we put out 1,830 rain barrels into the community, which has provided about 100,000 gallons in rainwater capture and storage. So it was a very popular program. Green roofs is another area that we're seeing more of in the community. Provides not only a stormwater potentiality to help capture some of that first inch of rainfall for a property, and this is the green roof at 7941 Lincoln Avenue, but it also helps reduce the heat island impact of a building, and so it provides some energy benefit in that sense. One of the other programs that some may not necessarily think about the correlation to water quality is the prescription, we'll call it recycling program. This is the prescription drop-off at the police facility. Again, a few years ago, Dr. Kennard, when she was the health director with the village, came and appeared before the Environmental Commission and talked about prescription drop-off programs. And of course, that has an impact on water quality, getting prescriptions not to be flushed down the toilet and make their way into the water system and out into Lake Michigan, but to be properly collected and properly disposed of. It provides a significant environmental benefit. Another part of the water management issue is water conservation. So these are a few of the more recent village items relating to water conservation. This is reflective of our investment in the FRACTA system, which is a predictive tool that the village uses to try and prioritize its water main replacement decisions based on likelihood of failure. The most recent iteration in this regard is our recent investment in this past year in the Aquify system, which is really about a much more advanced sensoring technology to identify water leaks in our system. The goal of this is water conservation, is to avoid unnecessary water loss in our system. So these represent sort of really our more recent, more state-of-the-art, if you will, steps towards water conservation. Air quality, you see a picture of the charging station You see some other program elements here. All of these, although I'm moving through them quickly, all of these represent work and discussions that have taken place with village departments, with the Environmental Commission, with other boards and commissions over periods of time. Things seem simple on a listing. Things aren't always simple, of course. This involves layering of discussions over time. The Complete Streets policy, you'll see referenced, adopted in 2018. A member of the Environmental Commission was on the steering committee along with other members of the village staff. I believe there are Park District staff members, a member of the Village Board of Trustees. I believe Karen Gray Keeler was on that steering committee as well, and working with Active Transportation Alliance, I believe, and perhaps a representative from CNT to put that together. And the whole purpose of a Complete Streets policy, of course, is for the village to develop policies that promote the interests of all users of a transportation system, pedestrians, cyclists, vehicles of all sorts and types. And so it's all about promoting infrastructure development that's beneficial to all users. One thing I'll call out on air quality, we didn't quite know where this fits in, but it's kind of different and something we're proud of having developed in partnership with the health department and with Oakton Community College is the Village Apiary, which will be up and running soon on the campus of OCC here in Skokie after a long search for an appropriate site for this. But Village Apiary will provide space for beekeepers who want to keep bees on an appropriately sited sort of communal facility. So that's something new and different, and again, clearly provides an environmental benefit. We weren't quite sure where in our plan to slot that one in. Again, as we think about air quality, probably the biggest single air quality project that's been done in this community was the downtown train station. I point that out just to remind people that the grant funding source for that train station was congestion mitigation and air quality funding, which is a federal funding program. Because people still sometimes do ask, excuse me, why there are no parking spots at the train station over there. Well, remember, it was designed to be an air quality and congestion mitigation project, so it was designed as an urban station. The intention was for people to walk, bike, take other means of transit to go to the station, not to drive your car to the station and go there. So, so this was really about providing an air quality benefit with the project. Energy conservation, I will say that the commission has been quite passionate in the past few years about energy conservation items, most particularly, I would say, with respect to development of solar energy. They've hosted a couple of informational forums. They've worked with the Stat Commission on one of those forums as well with respect to solar energy. The village has gone through and received a SolSmart Bronze designation, as well as we've engaged with, and I'm looking over in the corner of the room over here to Liz Zimmerman, who'll be presenting after me, who sort of marshaled the village's efforts on the SolSmart Bronze designation and the community solar program. So the commission's had a very active interest in boosting solar energy in this community, and I think quite successfully. And so I know that's an effort that they're very proud of and have done a lot of work on. Other energy initiatives, again, over a period of time. I remarked to John the other day, it's funny when you go back and look at the history of some of the things you do, you sort of forget about some of the things that were once sort of on trend and you sort of move away from. And I'm not saying wind power is not still on trend, but we had a wind power zoning amendment that was passed in 2008 that many people don't think very much about, because at the time I think it was thought that sort of very small level single home wind turbines were going to be a thing. And so we prepared and passed this zoning amendment to sort of enable that, and it never really became a thing very much for the average residential home to pursue, but we did it. It was a long time ago, but c'est la vie, I guess. And it was just note too, the first iteration we did of the electric ag program, we had a green power option on that as well. So you see here a listing lead buildings in the community, the lead density bonus that we've been able to put into place. You know, good programs, along with some of the references to the lead buildings and green roof projects in this community. So, I mean, they've come a long way. Transportation, I just blew past a picture of the train station. Since we've talked about it, I won't go back to it, but those of you that know me a little bit, that was a project I was pretty involved in. Transportation, I'd say, is another real passion area for the Environmental Commission. They've done a lot of work with bicycling infrastructure. They are tremendously helpful on that. Commission members have handed out and encouraged volunteers to fill out bicycle audits. We use those at a staff level to help inform our discussions about bike trail projects and what potential needs or priorities might be or interest levels are in the community for bicycle projects. We've got some call outs for upcoming projects. We've got Church Street Bike Lane projects still coming up, and of course the completion of the Skokie Valley Trail from Dempster north. A keen interest in public transit and other transit development as well. The Pace Pulse system still supposed to be coming along yet in this calendar year. Crawford Avenue process and planning process the commission keeps abreast of. So many things on the list. IGO is what John and I were talking about a week or two ago. You know, IGO car sharing was once upon a time a thing we wanted to get in Skokie, and we did, and we had it briefly, and we got the license agreement here and approved by the board, and it sort of came and it sort of went and it never took off in Skokie. But you know, divvy is another thing that the commission has researched, and so we continue to receive interest from other forms of shared transportation. So just because these things don't necessarily take off, or just because these things don't necessarily go forward, doesn't mean that the commission doesn't put in the time and the work researching, vetting, and or being approached by these opportunities. So they do an awful lot of work in that regard. Waste management is another area where I think the commission's had huge successes. For curbside recycling, the village has had long success with that, and we continue to look for ways to increase participation in that. As I mentioned earlier, there's always a need to sort of continue the education and the re-education on that. But the food composting program, I think the commission was very strong in sort of helping to, frankly, to push us along as staff on the need for the program that ultimately became the collective resource franchise agreement for, I'll call it curbside, but it's really front door food scrap composting service, which, you know, has been well received in the community. The commission members piloted and then ultimately got you know, successful approval of the ordinance amendments for food scrap composting in the backyards. So, I mean, that was another very successful initiative. Textile recycling, we came up with a solution on textile recycling, and we're now averaging, I believe, about 5,000 pounds of textiles being recycled per month. So, you know, all these things make an impact, and they're all good stories to tell. And the only picture I'll point out and laugh at there is the two people freezing in the snowstorm down there. I think that's spring greening from last year. I'm afraid that's what spring greening might look like this year. So anyway, litter control program, litter task force member Jeff Berman would probably kill me if I didn't show this picture. So the litter task force, there's some good photos there, and along with the newly revised Adopt a Street program from 2017, which has been popular and well received in Skokie. I've done a lot of work and coincides well with the village's Clean Green Skokie program. As I said at the start, education and outreach, I think, is really at the core of what the Environmental Commission does and is about. I think they do a great job. They spend a lot of time conceptualizing their outreach and their public forums, which they frequently in pre-COVID, you know, would hold over at the library and do a lot of planning and thought about what it is they want to do and what it is, the information they're trying to get out there. I also want to point out in the lower left corner, they also worked beginning on Earth Day 2018, the 100-day bag challenge, where they ran an awareness campaign to try and get people to not use single-use plastic bags. And instead, they participated and gave away 800 branded reusable bags. at multiple retail locations, and I guarantee you on some of the days they went out and stood in front of those stores and handed out bags, it was really hot outside, but they did it, and they did a great job with it. So kudos to them. Again, it's part of trying to educate, make people aware, encourage people to do the right thing, teach them how to do the right thing, advocate for it. So next steps. Well, as you know, the commission has largely been on hiatus in year 2020 due to the governor's proclamations and the nature in which commission's abilities to meet were limited. We went from, basically having the village board meeting to then the statutory commissions beginning to meet. So I'm pleased that we're now at the point where the commission will be able to meet again, and they will meet next Tuesday night, the 23rd, via Zoom. 7 p.m. is their meeting time. Next steps, continue to build and strengthen their existing partnerships and programs. I'm sure they will work to continue their existing plan objectives. The 5-year environmental plan is a 2016 to 2021 document. We have 10 months remaining in their plan years. So I know they're going to want to, I'm sure, pick up and continue with their work plans. We've, even though they haven't been meeting, we have them on a few work assignments they're getting ready to undertake for us. We're trying to get a program going internally to work on filling sidewalk gaps in the community. And so some of the commissioners are interested in going out and helping us prioritize within their areas of the community what are important sidewalk gaps that might be filled in a program, because the village is interested in identifying areas where it makes sense and where there might be receptivity on part of residents to having those sidewalk gaps filled. So they're going to be doing that sort of work for us, but I'm sure they will want to pick up their work plan and continue to move forward. And then obviously discuss, what comes sort of next with the planning for their next 5-year plan. And so I would think part of that process, as I said earlier on, this 5-year plan was sort of a creation of the Board of Health and the Environmental Commission. There are multiple boards involved in that, and so I think part of that process will obviously be consideration given to who the actors are in that sense in this process moving forward. And with that, I'm sure John's telling you I've spent too much time, so I'll stop and answer any questions.
Trustee Ulrich?
Hi, Max. Thanks so much for doing this and all the hard work you've done. Very impressive. I have a couple questions. One is there been any thought given to, I know we've discussed it before, and I think I brought it up before, but a plastic bag receptacle located in certain areas? That I've gotten those requests from citizens. And then my second comment would go to the litter task force. I know that a lot of organizations have, including some I belong to, and Karen does, and a bunch of other people, well, I'm trying to think of which other organizations, but nevertheless, I've been stopped and asked, why are you doing this? Why are you picking up litter? Things like that. And I think it's very catchy, and I think it encourages pride in our community if we can have some sort of, maybe, encouragement, several times a year, like Skokie wide, citizens, if you want to, pick up trash, we're doing it on such a date. And I just think that it would really catch on, be something that would be really good for Skokie. And I know a lot of people would participate in that.
Yeah.
And then finally, I just wanted to say at the end, if you could address the plow situation, we've been getting a ton of questions. For instance, today I got one on Tui's plowing and salting, and my understanding is the state does Tui, and Crawford is the county, and so maybe you could address that when everybody's done with their questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So
The trash bin, the plastic bags.
the plastic bags, thank you. Plastic bags, we are looking for a solution to try and create some sort of plastic bag program. COVID has thrown a bit of a curveball at plastic bag recycling in terms of going from a place where I think there was more of an encouragement for people to bring your plastic bags back to a place, to suddenly an environment where stores and other places did not necessarily want you to bring anything from your home back to them. So it's created a slightly different sort of environment. So I'm not sure that, as we sit here today, that the timing's necessarily great for that. Nonetheless, I mean, I think the research for us needs to continue for that. We are partnered with Collective Resource for the food scrap door service food scrap composting, and they have been providing that bag recycling service in Evanston. We have been working in that regard. We've just had some physical challenges with respect to exactly being able to mimic the program that they run in Evanston. That sort of has been our focus on investigating how we can solve to that, and so I think we're close on that.
Max, could you comment, though, that we did make efforts to reach out to the major grocery stores in the area to ascertain where they were in developing a transition away from the film plastic bags? I think you were part of some of those discussions, and it's sort of waiting to see how we can push them along to do the right thing.
That's true. That is true as well. I'm glad you reminded me of that as well, yes. All right, question 2. Was
Litter.
litter. Okay. The partnering with community groups and promotion of litter campaigns. Yes, we would love to do more of that. We have opportunities out there, adopt a street opportunities out there. We've tried to revitalize that promotional piece in 2017. And we've certainly tried to feature photos of groups doing those cleanups in New Skokie and in Skokie News, and splash those out there just to try and create that same sort of reaction and try and engage others and capture the imagination of other groups. So if we have people that are interested, contact Public Works. Liz Zimmerman is really probably the best point of contact for that, and we can match people's interest areas with what best fits. And we have a listing of sort of what groups have dibs, if you will, on what areas. And then let me know what snow items you want to talk about.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also plug this Clean Green Skokie program. Several years ago, when we were coming up with strategies to address the litter, we wanted to have those cleanup days and quickly realized that people's schedules made that very difficult to just have 1 day a year or 2 days a year. And so we made the month of April as the month that people could go out and pick up litter. And so the village provides bags and gloves and encourages people, whether it's a scout group or an athletic team or different groups, to participate in that Clean Green Skokie program. So we appreciate the feedback about maybe having some date-specific opportunities as well. And so thank you for that suggestion.
Trustee Roberts.
Good evening, Max. I've been a founding member of the CEAC Commission in 2007 and have served as a trustee liaison since that time. And I appreciated your review tonight because it just shows me how far we've come as a village. And a lot of credit goes to you, Liz Zimmerman, people before Liz, George, and others on village staff that have helped along the way. Did so much good work, but it also comes with Jenny Grossman and the members, the citizen members, resident members of the commission. They invest a lot of time, and they are very, very dedicated to helping our environment. And we've had excellent commissioners over the year that have really pushed us and moved us forward as a village. So I appreciate, and it's nice to kind of take a moment to review just how far we've come, and I think we have a lot to be proud of, and now the challenge is to come up with the next 5-year plan and to keep moving forward. So, but thank you for your presentation, Max.
Sure, thank you.
Well, and I want to take just a moment to thank Jenny. Also, I want to thank our Board of Health. As Max was alluding to in his presentation, this is a multidisciplinary project. It involves the Board of Health as well as the Sustainability Commission. It also involves members of the village board, Trustee Bromberg, Trustee Roberts, Trustee Gray Keeler have all participated either in all of it or in significant portions of putting the sustainability program together. And I want to recognize all of their efforts to do this. And of course, Max and the Public Works Department, when they're not taking care of snow and a couple other things, they're working on this. So Max, Liz, thanks to both of you as well. John?
I have a citizen comment. Mayor Van Duzen and the Skokie Board of Trustees, I'm writing again to ask the village to commit to finishing its 2016 to 21 environmental sustainability plan. I especially urge you to finish the plan's main objectives for air quality and energy conservation, the goals that most directly address global climate change at the local level. Though some objectives have not been met, you should all be very proud of the village's current sustainability plan. It provides a fantastic framework for environmental action in Skokie with clear goals for water management, air quality, energy conservation, transportation, and waste management. I've been researching the plan for months and have spoken with many village officials and staff about its progress, but I am only a resident observer. If I misstate anything about the current plan's success or failures, please correct me. To my knowledge, in the past 5 years, the village has not completed its main objective for air quality to hire a contractor to conduct a greenhouse gas emissions inventory for Skokie by 2021. This means there's no evidence to measure our main climate goal to reduce the production and release of air pollutants and greenhouse gases in the village. The current plan states that local data will guide best practices, but the village does not appear to be measuring Skokie's cumulative carbon footprint at all. If I am mistaken, I urge the village to release whatever data it's collected in the past 5 years. To my knowledge, the village has also not completed its main objective for energy conservation to create an energy reduction goal for the entire village. If anything, village energy use may be even higher than in 2016 when this goal was set. According to the Public Works Department, residential energy use has increased dramatically during COVID as more Skokie residents live, work, and school at home. Because the village hasn't increased its renewable energy use, which accounts for only 10% of total energy use since 2016, Skokie's carbon footprint from electricity has most likely increased. We're backsliding at a critical moment. Lastly, to my knowledge, the village's Sustainable Environmental Advisory Commission has been inactive since March 2020. Though many village commissions have continued to meet during COVID, it appears as though the SEA Commission has been deemed non-essential at this critical juncture when the village should be both finishing its current sustainability plan and drafting a follow-up. It's urgent that you restart the SEA Commission immediately. I am one of many residents who would love to help assist the Commission in furthering climate action in Skokie. Please invite the public to participate in this process. We are happy to help. Though I am frustrated that the village has been dragging its feet on a cause as urgent as climate action, I am also hopeful of what can be accomplished, both short-term and long-term. By the end of the year, I hope the village has finished its current sustainability plan and drafted a better follow-up. It's time for us to set clear, measurable target goals to address climate change and strive for bolder goals like net zero emissions, 100% renewable energy, and more. Climate change is an environmental crisis, a health crisis, an economic crisis, and an existential crisis all at once. The course of action is clear, so don't delay. Please be forward-thinking and act with urgency. Peace, James Johnson, 4821 Hall Street, Skokie. And if there's no other questions or comments, Max can address the Toohey Avenue and Crawford Avenue question about snow.
Yeah, Toohey Avenue is maintained by IDOT, their roadway, and they do the maintenance. Crawford Avenue is owned and maintained by Cook County, so, that's who's doing or not doing, as the case may be.
I know in the past we had a surplus of salt. How are we doing this year?
Our salt situation is stable, but I would say if we continue in this weather pattern, it will become of concern, and it will become of concern for this entire region. I guess I'll tell you we're getting more tomorrow. I was going to say, I'm not sure I'm going to tell you when I'm getting more salt, but I have some on the way tomorrow morning. It's a good question. We've been thinking about that a little bit, and I think I hope, obviously, as all public works directors do, that our supply will be adequate. And I have no particular concerns at this point in time about that, other than to say, when you have a couple-week period where you get 46 inches of snowfall, you begin to wonder, particularly as you're standing in the middle of your driveway, wondering where you're going to put this, your own snow. Is this going to end sometime? I mean, there are times when you get a significant snowfall like yesterday, where you might actually not use as much salt as you might think, because it snows so much so fast that you don't maybe end up putting down as much. But yeah, we could definitely need a break in the weather pattern, for sure. And I mean, I think we can all probably hazard a guess as to what salt prices are going to do for next year. So if you have a commodities broker, I think you know which way to bet, so.
Thank you, Max.
So the next item on the agenda is regarding the environment as well. Item C is a public hearing to consider amendments to the plan of operation and governance for the electricity aggregation program. And tonight, Liz Zimmerman is going to introduce this program and conduct the public hearing associated with it.
Thank you for having me. It'll be just a second for the PowerPoint to come up. Okay, tonight I just wanted to take this opportunity to give an update on the electric aggregation program and where we stand with that program. The village is a member of the North Shore Electric Aggregation Consortium, also known as NCAC. That consortium was formed around 2011 to leverage buying power by bringing a large group of customers together. A large group of customers generally gets us better electricity rates. Founding members at that time included those listed on the presentation. Park Ridge has currently not been participating. However, they'll be welcome back at any time if they change their mind. The Village Board of Trustees adopted an ordinance in 2012 which allowed the village to participate in electric aggregation, and the Plan of Operation and Governance, also known as the POGO, was also adopted at that time. And so what happened in the Electric Aggregation 1.0 program? It was a very straightforward program. Suppliers offered a fixed price for a set term. It was offered to all residential and small commercial customers. It was an opt-out program. And typically at that time, the programs only lasted 1 year. So we would put in a lot of work and it would only go for 1 year, and we would have to put in all of that work again for another contract. The nice thing about the program is that it curbed door-to-door solicitations, which is something that we all enjoy. We don't like the door-to-door salespeople going around and asking us for the different energy suppliers. And the program went into idle status in 2015 because it just was not possible to achieve savings under that model. And savings using that model are not foreseen moving forward in the near future. So that brings us to a new model called Electric Aggregation 2.0. In this case, the supplier sets a variable price offer for a set term that equals the ComEd rate. The supplier then identifies accounts within the village of Skokie that have what they consider to be a low cost to serve. A portion of the savings would go to the municipality in the form of a civic grant, or we could choose renewable energy credits. And the nice thing about 2.0 is it generally also curbs that door-to-door sales pitch. So the savings of the individual accounts are negligible. In many cases, or in most cases, the cost of administering the program and postage are more than what the savings would be, but there are savings to be had on the aggregate. And so the estimated civic grant for Skokie given to us by a consultant is estimated to be $124,000 annually. Of course, that number would depend on who actually participates or who opts out. The civic grant funding can really be used for any purpose, but we've had some discussions that we would like to use it for environmental initiatives, maybe neighborhood reinvestments, revitalization projects, or equity programs. Alternatively to the civic grant, we could also choose to purchase renewable energy credits. If we did that, it's estimated that we could increase our renewable energy credits to 19% of community load. The one concern with doing that is that most likely the energy credits would come from wind energy, and that's not local energy. A lot of those might come from Texas or further off, and so we don't often see local benefits to purchasing those RECs. Because of that, NCEAC, I just wanted to take the plug. We kind of put this program on pause when we had the opportunity to invest in the community solar, endorse the community solar program, because conversely to wind energy, the community solar program is local. We're supporting local jobs, and the residents are receiving direct benefits on that program. They're the ones that are receiving the savings when they participate into community solar. And I just got an update today on community solar enrollments, where the consortium is actually up to about 2,100 enrolled in community subscriptions, with a lot more on the waiting list. And so the process, if we so choose to proceed, there would be 2 readings of the amended POGO. The first POGO did not contemplate this new pricing structure or model. So essentially the amendments allow us to purchase electricity at the ComEd rate and not below it. And it also exempts those that are participating in community solar. There would also be a resolution to adopt the amended POGO at the March 1st board meeting. After that, NCEAC would release an RFP, we would review proposals, and we would select an alternate energy supplier. There's no obligation to participate if the proposals don't come back favorable. Electric Aggregation 2.0 would be another opt-out program, so those low cost to serve accounts would receive a letter. They would certainly have the opportunity to opt out. Account holders will not notice any changes to their ComEd bill, and community solar is ongoing and it would run concurrently with this program. And that's it in a nutshell. Do you have any questions?
Is there any action that the board needs to take tonight, or is this information only?
This is the first reading, and so we'll be back on March 1st,
March 1st.
To approve the resolution.
Okay. Trustee Gray Keeler. Hold on.
You're on mute, Karen.
Okay. Karen?
I haven't talked in so long. Thanks for the presentation, Liz. Can you explain what low cost to serve means?
Sure. Low cost to serve are generally condo units or also maybe businesses that perhaps use electricity in off-peak hours. So there's just a kind of a lower cost to serve those properties. And that's what that electrical supplier is going to look for, those low cost to serve units. They'll actually search through Skokie's accounts and determine that at a later date after the RFP goes out.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Roberts.
Liz, do you have any idea of what percent of residents and businesses would fall into this category, or how large of a group we're looking at possibly?
That's a great question. I do not at this point. However, I can reach out to our consultant and see if I can get that information for the next reading.
So you as a staff and village staff, you think that even though the individual savings is not a lot, that given the fact that we could aggregate or buy credits, that this is a worthwhile proposal for the village to pursue?
Yes, I mean, it was really important to us as a consortium to provide that community solar opportunity, because any resident and any small commercial business in Skokie can participate in that program and receive direct savings and also support environmental benefits. There's going to be I guess the estimate on the community solar is a community does a really good job if they can get 2% of accounts enrolled in that program. And so we're still talking about a significant number of accounts in Skokie that will not take the option to do that. And, we would just like to utilize those savings that are not being achieved and put them towards a community effort.
Thank you, Liz.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So March 1st, we will have it on the agenda one more time.
That's correct. And then item D and E were approved as part of tonight's consent agenda. And that
Thank-
completes my report this evening.
Thank you. Report of our Corporation Counsel, Michael Lorge.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, trustees. Good evening to everyone. I'm joined tonight by Barb Mangler, Assistant Corp Counsel. Item A is an ordinance which is on my report for first reading tonight and will be on the March 1st, 2021 report for second reading and adoption. This ordinance will amend Chapter 10 dealing with alcohol and liquor, Sections 1063 and 1064 of the Skokie Village Code by further defining the G class of licenses and segmenting it into two sub-licenses, a G1 which applies to brew pubs for beer, and now a G2 for distilled spirits, and thereby creating this new G2 license. In an ever-changing economic landscape over the last several years, Skokie has been refining Chapter 10 of the Village Code to accommodate new businesses and new restaurant concepts. Among these new concepts was the growing popularity of small batch craft beers. Since permitting brew pubs in Skokie to accommodate these small batch craft beers, we have had several local beer brew pubs open or at least make inquiries about opening. The interest in small batch on-site creation of alcohol is now expanded beyond beer and deals now with spirits, with a marked growth in what are called distilling pubs. In these distilling pubs, a distiller manufactures its specialty spirit which can then be purchased in bottles for at-home consumption, as well as to be tried in the distiller's signature cocktail for on-premises consumption. This amendment to Chapter 10 is consistent with Skokie's ongoing response to community and business trends. And it would come back, as I said, on March 1st for final board action. If there are any questions? If not, Mayor, that would conclude my report for tonight.
Thank you. Next item is Plan Commission Case 2020-18P. Chairman Paul Luke with Matt Brandmeier. Paul?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Tonight's case is 2020-18P, a special use permit request. During the January 21st meeting of the Plan Commission, we reviewed a request for a special use permit for a daycare, not in a residence, and any relief that may have been discovered during the review of this case at 4035 Dempster Street. The proposed daycare, Little Muslims Child Care, intends to occupy a storefront most recently used by Mosaic Infant Center, which was previously granted a special use permit. The center will be open every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for up to 15 children between the ages of infant to 3. The site will have a maximum of 3 employees at any given time, with food catered into the facility. There will be no substantial renovations to the space, as it was already permitted and used as a daycare center until very recently. Some replacement of the fire protection system is needed. The playground will not be provided on site, but at Seneca Park, adjacent to the south of the site. The parking requirement has been met. No additional relief was discovered during review of this case. The Plan Commission voted 8 ayes with 1 commissioner absent, to approve the petitioner's request. And tonight we do have Miriam Boza on Zoom, if you need to question or if she wants to make a comment.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Good evening. Let me get a motion and a second. A motion is in order. Trustee Bromberg, seconded by Trustee Gray Keeler. Comment or questions? Ms. Bozai, would you like to just tell us a little bit about your project?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been a teacher for about, I would say 12 years now. I'm a special education teacher currently. I teach in Cicero. Previously, I taught at Lincoln Junior High in Skokie, as well as MCC Academy. One area that I found that there is a need for is for infants and toddlers. Those daycare spaces tend to run out really quickly. I've had 3 kids in the last 3 years, so it's something that's become kind of a personal thing for me, where I hope that by providing this service to a space that was just sitting there empty but had been previously used as a daycare, I hope that I can provide more services for the area of Skokie and more opportunities for their children, especially for the diverse community that there is. And I think that this is a great attractant to people who primarily speak other languages like Urdu and Arabic, and who might want to care for their children, bilingual care. I feel like the space would give them that opportunity.
Well done. Are there any comments or questions? If not, would the clerk call the roll, please?
Trustee Roberts,
Aye.
trustee Sutker,
Aye.
trustee Ulrich,
Aye.
trustee Bromberg,
Aye.
trustee Klein,
Aye.
trustee Gray Keeler,
Aye.
Mayor Langton.
Aye, the motion passes. Congratulations, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great to have
That
you.
concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Paul. And the concluding item on the agenda is citizen comments. John?
The first one, I would just like to say I registered for my COVID vaccine on January 31st and received the vaccine on February 2nd. I thought the sign-up and vaccine clinic were run very well. I know that sometimes you only hear complaints, but I thought I would just let you know I am very happy with the way everything went. This is from Rosa Negretti. Village of Skokie police officers should be equipped with body cameras. The Body Camera Act was established in 2016, and Skokie should not wait any longer to move forward with this. Your avoidance and silence speaks volumes. This is from Vernice Bogan. I would encourage the police department to, at a minimum, consider a non-lethal weapon that has hit the market and purchased by countries such as Spain and domestic police departments such as LAPD. I am talking about the Bola Wrap, which is a product of Wrap Technologies. The Bola Wrap is basically a lasso that can be used to subdue someone in a mental health crisis or an uncooperative person suspected of being a flight risk. Check out the company's Twitter account, see YouTube video. Good stuff, thank you. Regards, Mark Erickson, Skokie. To the Mayor and Board of Trustees, I am writing today to urge you to act in alignment with your expressed values of racial justice for this community. I was encouraged when I received the Caucus Party's mailer in the fall. George Floyd's name was on the front, and the phrase Black Lives Matter ended the opening paragraph about addressing public health issues and systemic racism. This seemed to be at the core of the Caucus Party's agenda. However, I am dismayed by the glacial pace of the village's work to shift certain policies of the Skokie Police Department. While I appreciate the way that community groups have been given voice through the Public Safety Commission, I am also wary of the ways that institutions can delay structural change through fact-finding reports, specialized committees, and continual deliberation on pretty basic asks that come directly from the people most impacted by discriminatory policing practices. If our leadership truly believes that Black Lives Matter, then incremental changes such as the 8 can't wait policy revisions and requiring police officers to wear body cams should be easily instated before the April 6 elections. In the same mailer I mentioned in the beginning, the Caucus Party stated that they accomplished everything they promised. I urge you to keep this promise to eradicate systemic racism and prejudice, lest words and slogans become empty signifiers. Molly Greening, 4821 Hall Street, Skokie. I just want to say that the police in Skokie are the nicest and kindest people I have encountered. I appreciate all the hard work you do to keep our village safe. Thank you. Adisa Kavedzik. Abolish police, at the very least. Equip police with body-worn cameras. Jen Karlops. I'm writing to urge the village to defend the Skokie Police Department and redirect the village to defund the Skokie Police Department and redirect those funds towards a network of community care that does not criminalize Black, Latinx, and other people of color in our community. Your reluctance and foot dragging on taking action to make even the most moderate changes to the use of force policies of Skokie Police Department reveal that village board members are very comfortable with the current policies that allow police to enact violence and harm on marginalized citizens with impunity under the guise of protection of our village. For whom do the police serve in this community? Under the current policies, the police serve the white property-owning community, while people of color and those of lesser means are over-policed and underprotected. You cannot even take action on requiring body cameras. A modest ask, given that even the police with body cameras can kill and be acquitted for killing Black and brown people like George Floyd or Eric Garner. In the case of the Skokie Police Department shooting of Demetrius Bogan in April 2020, there is no clear evidence to show what occurred because the officer's dash camera did not capture the shooting, furthering distrust between the Black community and the village police. Body cameras are a logical and modest liberal reform, yet you cannot bring yourself to act on a common sense step that will not even save lives and has been ineffective in holding the police accountable. I have no illusions that this village board will listen to arguments about defunding the police, since you have not acted on the modest police reforms from 8 Can't Wait that Skokie United has been asking you for since the Vigil for Black Lives in June, in which all of you took a knee in memory of George Floyd. But if you actually meant what you said about making a meaningful change in June at the Vigil, you will consider the following life-saving measures. Immediately cut the Skokie Police Department budget in half. If social services and village programs are to survive the strained economic times of COVID, they will need an infusion of cash. What better place to pull from than the organization that eats up a huge chunk of the village budget and does active harm to building trust between marginalized communities and the village? Challenge the authority of the Skokie Police Union by firing officers with excessive force complaints and withholding their pensions. If Officer Michael Hart had been identified as an overly violent and aggressive police officer and fired prior to severely injuring Cassandra Fernstein in 2013, perhaps the village would not have had to pay $875,000 in restitution. I imagine that raised our insurance premium quite a bit as a village. Cut off all funds for police militarization, including links with the Department of Homeland Security, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and the FBI, as well as cutting off all funding for military-style weaponry and training tactics for the Skokie Police Department. This militarization not only threatens the lives of Black and brown citizens, but it also feeds the mindset of police that they are in a war with their citizenry, thus leading to police using their implicit bias rather than common sense in response to events and situations. Disallow the Skokie Police Department to partner with local schools in SRO programs. As evidenced by their own words and experiences, our students of color do not feel safe in their schools with police in the hallways, and this criminalization fuels the school-to-prison pipeline. Immediately engage in a community needs assessment of marginalized groups and invest in community-based resources that consider the legacy of harm faced by marginalized groups. If we truly believe in equity, we will assess how our community is inequitable and find ways to redirect our policing funds toward immediately helping citizens. Adopt a care, not cops model of reform. Housing, transit, food, and education should be at the center of our definition of community improvement and crime reduction. Create a village fund for mutual aid. The ingenuity and compassion of our community members and their organizations are the key to building a system of community care that does not require a punitive mindset. If we are to be the change we wish to see, we must start to imagine a Skokie village that fully invests in caring for all its community members. Please take action, defund the police. Sincerely, Lewis Mercer, 4257 Oakton Street, number 2, Skokie. To Mayor Van Duzen and the Skokie Board of Trustees, I am writing to urge the village to follow through on its commitment to police reform. It's been 8 months since June's Vigil for Black Lives in Oakton Park, where over 1,000 Skokie residents gathered to support local efforts to end systemic violence and bias. In the aftermath, it seems little has changed. Skokie PD has still not revised their use of force policies, still patrols without body cams, and still receives funding for military-style equipment. The village still hasn't taken common sense, popularly supported steps towards reimagining police. Please act with the urgency you professed at last June's vigil. Thank you, Leslie Nathan, 7700 block of Kedville. Dear Village of Skokie trustees, thank you for all you do for our community. I am writing out of concern for the policing policies and practices of the Skokie community in order to ensure the dignity of each member. My family moved here with the hopes of a safe, welcoming community for all, just as Skokie celebrates. With recent events concerning the over-policing in schools, with SROs and police brutality against particularly our Black and brown communities, it is in the Village of Skokie's best interest to adopt and maintain several policies to ensure an equitable and transparent policing process. 1, please adopt all the policies under 8 can't wait. Skokie United has submitted an excellent proposal and hosted 2 sessions, one with the village and one open for community discussion. The Skokie community is overwhelmingly ready for all of these measures to be implemented as promised by our mayor. 2, please mandate that all officers who come in contact with the public wear and have on body cameras each time during each interaction. Body cameras are essential to providing the transparency in policing to maintain trust between the police and the community. When I heard of the Bogan family situation where a shooting by a police officer took place, where Bogan was shot in the back, and that there was no camera to ensure proper policing and care for the victim, I grew increasingly concerned. In this day and age where there are too many cases of implicit bias, racism, and violence, intended or not, affecting those of all ages and genders, we should have the documentation for each situation where an officer approaches a civilian to guarantee the civilian's full rights are upheld. Please enact this practice now. 3, also, please invest in social workers and those who can assist in de-escalation in matters. Too often, police officers are called onto scenes where the proper response may be caution, care, wellness checks, or emotional support. These should not result in unnecessary violence or worse, death. 4, additionally, please immediately remove and revise all Skokie information with the image of a caricature of Native Americans. People are not logos. Follow suit of Washington, Cleveland, and other teams so as not to replicate colonization, but to honor the dignity of each member of our community. 5, our black and brown students are over-policed and criminalized in schools, making up far past their population percentage in discipline infractions in District 219 schools. The schools do not keep or release data concerning referrals to the court system. Currently, District 219 is undergoing a process of deciding upon SROs in schools. How will you ensure a fair, equitable process, as several board members have already taken a stand on SROs before the community has had the opportunity to be fully engaged in this incredible decision concerning their children? Additionally, SROs are in a few feeder schools, ones that have higher numbers of black and brown children. How does the village and its schools account for this? I look forward to a response concerning my submission. Thank you. Angela Sangha Gadsden. Dear elected officials, a body camera is a tool to help hold officers accountable and make departments more transparent. The evidence from body cameras can be used to rebuild trust with members of our community and reduce citizen complaints. Please require every officer to wear a body camera. Thanks. Jasmine Sabagala. It's been 8 months since Skokie's Vigil for Black Lives. What has changed? Mayor and trustees, you have the power to expedite this process and pass 8 can't wait legislation immediately. What is stopping you? Please fund and require body cams at all times. Think of the trauma that Demetrius Bogan and his family could have been saved, the suffering they'll endure that didn't need to be if mental health professionals were included and body cams were required. If the village were to take real action, that would bring reform to policing so violently. Please reimagine policing and partner more armed officers with unarmed social workers and health professionals to improve de-escalation and mediation and save lives, and reduce trauma in the communities that have struggled for so long. Many Americans have lost faith in police, and reimagining police can help restore trust by promoting new approaches to conflict resolution. Please take long overdue action now. Margie Smith. My friend James Johnson has stated his position so well, I borrowed it. We as a community have an obligation to all of our citizens all the time. Better policy will protect them, and our safety forces both deserve nothing less. To Mayor Van Duzen and Skokie Board of Trustees, I am writing to urge the village to follow through on its commitment to police reform. It's been 8 months since June's vigil. I think this is repetitive of what was already read. Let me just make sure. It sounds very similar to what's already been read, but it was submitted. I'm writing to urge the village to follow through on its commitment to police reform. It's been 8 months since June's vigil for Black Lives in Oakton Park, where over 1,000 Skokie residents gathered to support local efforts to end systemic violence and bias. In the aftermath, it seems little has changed. Skokie PD has still not revised their use of force policies, still patrol without body cameras, and still receive funding for military-style equipment. The village still hasn't taken common sense, popularly supported steps towards reimagining policing. You all attended June's vigil and were emphatic that you were ready for action. Trustee Klein, at the gathering, you said, "It is our task to fix what is broken." Trustee Roberts, you said it's time to bring truth and justice to Skokie. Trustee Brownberg, you quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. saying, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Corporation Counsel Lorch, you took a knee for 8 minutes and 46 seconds to reflect on the murder of George Floyd. Photos and videos of your words and actions were posted by your political party to signal change was imminent, but you've been awfully quiet ever since. First, I ask you to expedite the process of revising Skokie PD's use of force policies. For months, the incredible organizers of Skokie United have been advocating that the village adopt the common sense 8 can't wait revisions and have described the current official Skokie PD use of force policy as one of the worst in the country. It shames us all. The village's Public Safety Commission has been slowly reviewing these policies, but you, mayor and trustees, have the power to pass 8 can't wait legislation immediately. If use of force policy reforms can't wait, why have you already waited for 8 months? Second, I ask you to mandate that Skokie PD adopt body-worn cameras as soon as possible. A new bill from our state legislators may require this by 2025 anyway, but we shouldn't wait that long. Polls show around 90% of Americans support body cams, so I don't understand why the village continues to resist change. It's been over 10 months since a Skokie PD officer shot a young man, Demetrius Bogan, under mysterious circumstances, and the fog of suspicion around the case lingers. It's a perfect example of why body cams matter. They protect the public and police alike. Third, I ask you to consider broader systemic reforms. Personally, I would like the village to reimagine policing and experiment with programs that partner more armed officers with unarmed social workers and health professionals to improve mediation and de-escalation. So many Americans have lost faith in police, and reimagining police can help restore trust by promoting new approaches to resolving conflict. Please act with the urgency you professed at last June's vigil. Peace, Elaine Vincent. Good evening. We are writing out of concern that efforts at police reform have stalled in Skokie. We're noticing with disappointment that many institutions who back in June were quick to make statements of support for Black lives and promise to take action have become complacent in their efforts since this summer's protests. While it is great that the mayor took the Obama pledge, it seems that the process of engagement and reform of Skokie's use of force policies has stalled. We were also disappointed to see that the purchase of tactical gear for the police was approved unanimously back in November, but no body cams have yet been purchased. We need police to be accountable to the community, not militarized. We believe that the time is past due to review and reform the Skokie Police Department's use of force policies and practices. This needs to happen with transparency, public engagement, and a commitment to eliminating excessive force. Thank you for your time. Kathleen and Darren McNutt, Skokie, Illinois. This email is for the upcoming trustees meeting. I'd like to urge the trustees to take a look at different policies for policing in Skokie. The time is now to make changes to the way we do things here in Skokie. First and foremost, all Skokie police should wear body cams. This is a must. There's really no reason not to unless we're worried about hiding something. Second, I know the village has been introduced to the 8 can't wait legislation, and I think it is something that can help our community immensely. We need to adopt all 8 policies ASAP. It's also time to follow through on the Obama pledge and revise Skokie's use of force policy in conjunction with 8 can't wait. All of these things just make Skokie an even better place to live. Why wouldn't we make these changes? It's time to do the right thing and be better in Skokie. Thanks for your time, Nicole Reynolds. Good evening. In the wave of events that transpired over the last year, including the murder of George Floyd and white supremacist violence at the Capitol, I felt compelled to address an area where I feel we can improve right here in Skokie. It is my hope that the village takes every measure available to them to unequivocally ensure the safety and well-being of all community members, especially those who have historically been endangered by police. My question tonight is, will Skokie finally mandate body-worn cameras for officers on patrol? The presence of video footage is often the only thing that can bring justice for the victims of police brutality and hold police officers accountable for the violence against people of color. Polls show 90% of Americans support this common sense measure for accountability. At the same time, the cameras could also protect officers falsely accused of wrongdoing, a win-win situation. I ask that you listen to the public and the pain that some of our communities are in. The past year forced us all to open our eyes to the gaping systemic inequality present in every facet of our society. In this coming year, we must reckon with it. I would love for the village to reimagine policing entirely and to take a serious look at the overall budget compared to other health services. Could it be possible to partner more armed officers with unarmed social workers and health professionals to improve de-escalation and mediation? Many Americans have lost faith in police, and this is a time you can help restore trust in our community by promoting new approaches to conflict resolution. Do not be limited by lack of precedent or imagination in your mission to serve the community. Thank you for taking the time to read this letter, the Thomas family. To Mayor Van Duzen and the Skokie Board of Trustees, this past summer, many of us attended the Skokie Vigil for Black Lives, a powerful gathering to acknowledge and update the ongoing scourge of police brutality against our communities of color and especially our black communities. And though we are now buried under mountains of snow, we cannot forget the change we committed to last summer or bury the truth of racial violence that continues to be perpetrated through policing in America, including right here in Skokie. We know that it is not enough to sign a pledge or form a committee without a true commitment to completely reimagining police in our community. Otherwise, we will just end up rebranding a powerful system and thereby inadvertently help to sustain it. I urge you to consider these important steps towards a long overdue and much needed overhaul of policing in Skokie. Cut the police budget in half and reallocate funds to social services, including non-police response teams, to address conflict resolution and mental health emergencies, as well as resources to support housing security, food security, mental health, disability, seniors, immigrants, and those with mixed status, and so on. Models of this approach already exist in our other communities. Stop funding police militarization. Fire officers with excessive force complaints and withhold their pensions. Put into place a rigorous anti-bias and de-escalation, nonviolent crisis intervention training for all officers. Disallow the Skokie Police Department to partner with local schools and SRO programs. Implement body cameras immediately. Engage in a community needs assessment of marginalized groups and invest in community-based resources that consider the legacy of harm faced by marginalized groups. The horrifying legacy of racial violence is deeply entrenched in our system of policing and incarceration. In fact, it is entrenched in all of our systems, regardless of how well-meaning any of us individuals may be. If we are to make the change that we know is necessary, we need to start right here in our own community. And as we change these institutions, we as individuals will need to learn a new way as well. We can do this. Finally, on a separate but related note, please stop ticketing folks for not moving their cars in this impossible snow during an already impossible pandemic. This policy unfairly penalizes those without driveways or garage. It's such a hard time. Please don't make it worse. Sincerely, Maggie Vandermeer, 5304 Mulford Street, Skokie. Skokie United has worked with the 8 Can't Wait policy team to analyze the current use of force policy from the Skokie Police Department. We presented our findings to the Public Safety Commission this past December and hosted a follow-up conversation in January. Many Skokie residents attended and were concerned by our findings. Currently, Skokie does not meet even one of the recommendations from 8 Can't Wait. With the consideration of Chief Scarpelli's statement from June, Skokie meets 2 of the recommendations. In consideration of the new justice reform bill passed in the Illinois legislature In January, House Bill 3653, we know many of the policies that are currently in place will be updated. We urge the board to consider and review our findings to expedite the timeline for implementation of an updated, consolidated, and public use of force policy that meets 8 can't wait standards in House Bill 3653. By taking a critical look at our work and implementing the changes we present, you will fulfill the Obama pledge you took over the summer of 2020, and most importantly, guarantee that the citizens of Skokie, specifically those who are historically marginalized, Black, Indigenous, Transgender, and Latinx, are protected under the use of force policy from any potential abuses as a result of policy inadequacies. By moving quickly to change the use of force policy, the board demonstrates a commitment to transparency, integrity, and social justice for the village of Skokie. This is a budget-neutral approach to police reform that benefits both the citizens and police force. Thank you kindly, Skokie United Policy Team, Matt Timken, Lawrence Walters, Annie Warshaw, Brian Williams, Skokie United, engaged in diversity and pro-Skokie. It's been 8 months since Skokie's Vigil for Black Lives and 10 months since Skokie Police Department shot a young man in the back under mysterious circumstances. Nothing has changed in the aftermath. Skokie PD has still not revised the use of force policies, still patrol without body cameras, and still receive funding for military-style equipment. Well, Mayor and Board of Trustees, you are on notice. We will hold you accountable for your inaction. We will leverage this election for change and reform. You have yet to fulfill your Obama pledge promise to revise Skokie PD's use of force policy, even though reforms lead to immediate harm reduction. For months, Skokie United has been advocating that the village adopt the 8 can't wait revisions and have described the current official Skokie PD use of force policy as one of the worst in the country. The village's Public Safety Commission has been too slow in reviewing these policies, but you, Mayor and trustees, have the power to expedite this process and pass 8 can't wait legislation now. For years, the village and Skokie PD have resisted body-worn cameras for officers on patrol, even though polls show 90% of Americans support this common sense measure for accountability. Body cameras protect everyone from false accusations and twisted narratives. Honest members of our law enforcement community have nothing to fear and everything to gain by wearing body cameras. New Illinois legislation may soon mandate that all local police departments adopt body cams by 2025, but why should we wait? Had body cameras been in use, the March 2020 case of Demetrius Bogan shot in the back by a Skokie PD officer after they received a call about a suspicious man sitting in his car in a 7-Eleven parking lot would be settled. You, Mayor and trustees, have the power to approve body cameras immediately. Why won't you protect our officers from bogus claims and also protect our citizens from rogue police officers? I am not saying defund the police. I would like our village to reimagine policing and partner more armed officers with unarmed social workers and health professionals to improve de-escalation and mediation. Many Americans have lost faith in police, and reimagining police can help restore trust by promoting new approaches to conflict resolution. Please promptly enact these changes for the safety and well-being of everyone who lives, learns, works, and grows in Skokie. Respectfully, Kathleen Weiss Boyle. Just a few comments about snow plowing and the village's snow parking ordinance. When there are months where there are 2 odd days in a row, such as this year, 1/31 and 2/1, why not treat the 2/1 date as the true alternate even day for other side of the street parking? The way it was this year was a disaster. It left streets a mess, and residents lost a day because they kept cars on one side for 2 days. Had the day of 2/1 been treated as the alternate side of the street from the previous odd days, streets would have been passable a day sooner. Your drivers came, I don't know how many times, and really didn't do a thing on that plowed side, as it was plowed again and again. Another note, why do plows go through the center of a side street when there are no cars present on one empty side? If it's empty, plow to the curb, why not? Result, no cars can get close into the curb for parking when it's time. It makes the street narrow once they return to parking, as they are parked out into the street several feet. Ask your plow drivers or fire trucks, garbage trucks that came by the next day and couldn't get through the streets as cars are halfway into the streets due to plows not getting into the curbs. The village needs to take time to re-examine its snow removal process and its alternate street parking. If it takes more advertising to get the word out, so be it. If it takes robocalls to explain where cars should be, so be it. But the way it is now isn't really all that great. When we dig out, such as this afternoon, where is there left to park? We aren't allowed to go on the other side until 6 p.m. No plows have been seen since early this morning on the east-west directions of Birchwood between Crawford and Kenton and K Street 7400 to 7500 blocks, for instance. So as we prepare for tomorrow's parking, try getting a fire truck down many of the streets. The way it is now, plowed, not easy for them in an emergency. Yes, this was a once every so many year event yesterday, but we should learn something from it, not keep the status quo. I hope this gets some attention and not, he's just another complainer. Richard Bart. I am writing to urge the village to follow through on its commitment to police reform. It's been 8 months since June's vigil for Black Lives in Oakton Park, where over 1,000 Skokie residents gathered to support local efforts to end systemic violence and bias. In the aftermath, it seems little has changed. Skokie PD has still not revised their use of force policies, still patrol without body cams, and still receive funding for military-style equipment. The village still hasn't taken common sense, popularly supported steps towards reimagining policing. You all attended June's vigil and were emphatic that you were ready for action. Trustee Klein at the gathering, you said it's our task to fix what is broken. Trustee Roberts, you said it's time to bring truth and justice to Skokie. Trustee Bromberg, you quoted Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., saying our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Excuse me. Corporation Counsel Lorch, you took a knee for 8 minutes and 46 minutes to reflect on the murder of George Floyd. Photos and videos of your words and actions were posted by your political parties to signal change was imminent, but you've been awfully quiet ever since. First, I ask you to expedite the process of revising Skokie PD's use of force policies. For months, the incredible organizers of Skokie United have been advocating that the village adopt the common sense 8 can't wait revisions and have described the current official Skokie PD use of force policy as one of the worst in the country. The village's Public Safety Commission has been slowly reviewing these policies, but you, Mayor and trustees, have the power to pass 8 can't wait legislation immediately. If use of force policy reforms can't wait, why have you already waited for 8 months? Second, I ask you to mandate that Skokie PD adopt body-worn cameras as soon as possible. A new bill from our state legislators may require this by 2025 anyway, but we shouldn't wait that long. Polls show around 90% of Americans support body cams, so I don't understand why the village continues to resist change. It's been over 10 months since a Skokie PD officer shot a young man, Demetrius Bogan, under mysterious circumstances, and the fog of suspicion around the case lingers. It's a perfect example of why body cams matter. They protect the public and police alike. Third, I ask you to consider broader systemic reforms. Personally, I would like the village to reimagine policing and experiment with programs that partner more armed officers with unarmed social workers and health professionals to improve mediation and de-escalation. So many Americans have lost faith in police, and reimagining police can help restore trust by promoting new approaches to resolving conflict. Please act with urgency you professed at last June's vigil. Peace, James Johnson, 4821 Hull Street, Skokie.
Mayor, just to clarify for the record, the last one came in during the course of the meeting.
Thank you. Trustee Bromberg, I think it is this evening.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.